Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I am Tracy Norman, Superintendent, and I will be presenting the 25-26 budget recommendation. So before we begin, I just want to remind that you've heard from our assistant superintendents, our directors, our assistant principals. They have presented on their respective budgets, so tonight is more of a summarization and a global approach. Slide. So these are our budget priorities. Safety and security, maintaining our programs, and really just supporting our students, faculty to meet state standards. Some of the things that you heard leading up to this that are embedded in these areas, safety and security for one. You heard us talk about the actual vestibules, additional security cameras. So those things are already a part of that, and they will remain our priorities for the following year. Next slide. So this is a portrait of a graduate, and New York State wants all of our students in the state of New York to be proficient in each of these areas. So what you're looking at on the screen there really is what drives our budget and our priorities, and that's to produce students that meet each of these areas, and not only become proficient in these areas, but also become competitive as they enter the workforce in each of these areas. So this is the famous tax cap. So what you're looking at are the actual steps involved in calculating the tax cap. So dating back to 2011, the state has imposed a tax cap that all districts must adhere to, meaning that you cannot raise the tax levy higher than the actual tax cap. This year, the tax cap is 3.55%. The tax levy that we are proposing is 1.5%, which is well below the maximum. I also want to note that for the past 6 years, we have come in well below the tax cap. So that's good news for our taxpayers. Slide. So looking at the revenue side, again, you see the recommended levy at 1.5%, which again is lower than last year's, which was 1.7%. You also see last year that we had state aid of $88 million. This year we have state aid of $94 million or so that's coming in. Now that allows us to lower our tax levy, so that's again is a good thing. One of the reasons why that has increased, Governor Hochul awarded $1.4 billion to the state. And as we've spoken about, BOCES, they're doing capital projects, which has also produced additional aid for our district. So the end result is that we're able to recommend a 1.5% tax levy. Slide. And this is a graphic. You have our state aid by category. No surprises there. Foundation aid make up the majority, which is 69%. The second highest area is transportation at 16%.
I have a pointer.
Okay, thank you. Next slide. We're good. So this is the district revenue by category, and this is a year-to-year comparison. Just kind of gives you a visual of how we compare this year to last year. Well, this actual current year, state aid, 39%. As I mentioned, next year's a little bit higher at 40%. And then you see the other side, which is the tax levy, which is a good chunk of our revenue. Last year, again, 58.7%, but as I mentioned, next year we're proposing just a little bit lower at 1.5%. So that's good news for our taxpayers. Next slide. Patrick?
Yeah. So I'm going to review this slide real quick. So this slide shows the superintendent's recommended budget, and so Proposition 1, as it typically is the general fund budget, the total general fund budget. So we're proposing a budget of $236.7 million, which is a 5.88% budget-to-budget increase. Dr. Norman has covered the school tax levy, $133.3 million, which is a 1.5% increase in the levy. property tax revenues and other sources. That's principally state aid and some miscellaneous aids, $99.5 million. The appropriated reserves, the district has reserves which are like rainy day accounts, we sometimes say, for specific purposes. So we're proposing to use $2.47 million of our reserves. The reserves that we'd be using would be the Employee Benefit Accrued Liability Reserve, which is called EBLR, which is for payments to employees that are separating from the district or have accrued, let's say, vacation time, which they can liquidate. We're proposing to use the unemployment reserve, so that's set aside for unemployment expenses that the district incurs. We've seen a little uptick in that. We're talking about using the ERS and TRS reserve. And finally, the debt service reserve, which is a fund that's been set aside. It's actually money that was associated with the borrowing from the high school, so it's literally that old. And we have to use that in the next couple of years because we'll be retiring the debt associated with that. So that's the other piece of that. Finally, the assigned, I used to call it appropriated fund balance, we now call it assigned. We're recommending $1.425 million, which is the surplus that we anticipate getting from the current year and giving that back to the taxpayers to lower the levy for next year, the upcoming year. So you see the appropriation budget is equal to the revenue budget. That's Proposition 1. Proposition 2 is an authorization to spend up to $16.6 million on additional capital projects. So these are projects that would complement our existing $98 million project. And what we've done is we're proposing to use $5.3 million from our existing capital reserve and borrow the remaining $11.3 million. And we've engineered this to have no tax impact because the expense associated with repaying the borrowing would be less than or equal to the building aid we'd receive over approximately a 15-year period of time. So we're able to spend $16.6 million with no tax impact. And I'll just very briefly go through, we're going to talk more about this in coming weeks, what we're proposing to do with that. So we've talked a little bit about this. We're proposing to add air conditioning, kind of like central air, to classrooms in 3 of our elementary schools. And so these 3 schools are Pine Tree, North Main, and Central Valley. So these are the schools that, as part of our 2023 capital program, are having major heating renovation, where we're going from a steam heating system to hot water system. And I've mentioned this before, so as part of that, it's sort of an invasive process where we're doing new boilers in the basement, new piping that's going to run up through the building, along the ceilings, chases and the like, down to new unit ventilators. So for a relatively small investment, we can add air conditioning. So it's in my opinion, it's a wise time to do that. It's a cost-effective investment right now to add air conditioning. And then the other big piece of that $16.6 million is adding walls and doors to the open classrooms at North Main Elementary School. So we've heard from folks there. It's sort of it's one of those things you can't easily do that, but now is the time for as part of this 16.6, we can add doors, walls for security reasons, for instructional functionality. I understand the open classrooms are nice, but there are some challenges with that. So we're proposing to enclose that and do that work at North Main. So that's the bulk of Proposition 2.
Thank you,
I
Patrick.
just have a question, I think, for really the public's benefit. The air conditioning is actually now a state mandate that's coming out, that if it hits over a certain degree, we have to make arrangements. So I think just for the public to know, this isn't just an add-on that would be nice to have. It's actually been mandated in law that otherwise you have to send the kids home or make alternate arrangements, correct?
That's correct. You want me to answer that? So it's called the Heat Index Law, and it's effective September 1 of 2025. And so when classrooms, I think actually non-instructional spaces hit 88 degrees, the mandate is that you can't occupy the space anymore. You have to take action to reduce that or move people to another area. So we're mandated to come up with a plan that addresses that, and part of our plan, we have short-term plans, and the $16.6 million Proposition 2 is sort of the longer-term plan, where we're going to actually air-condition classrooms. And you're right, Michael, it's now a state mandate that these classrooms can't be used when they're above 88 degrees. So.
And then the middle school, I've had kids that gone through the middle school. The second floor of the middle school is like a heat box inferno in the summertime.
Yes.
Is that on the slate at some point? Because I only have the three schools that you mentioned.
Yeah, so as part of the 16.6, there's also funding in there for electrical upgrades that we would need to do. And these are actually major upgrades at the middle school and the other buildings that are involved. And the solution there, I'll call it the medium-term solution, is to make these electrical upgrades and install almost like a permanent installation of sort of a 2-ton, a heavier window unit to air-conditioned classrooms. So there's sort of multiple things. There's also a very short-term move, which would be to install more like smaller, I would say, air conditioning units that you'd see in your home, kind of, as a very short term. So there's short, there's medium, and there's the long term.
So the electrical upgrades will help get all of those installed to support the load.
Yeah, and that's required to have the larger window units, which will do a much better job than sort of the residential type units, which we're going to use in the short run, the very short run.
Yeah, we do have a plan. That's, a lot of this work is taking place now. Our principals have done a great job of identifying areas, cooling areas, when the temperature reaches that. And we're confident by September 1 that we'll have a plan in place that we can meet the governor's intent, this heat index 10.
Thank you.
So what you're looking at here is a budget-to-budget comparison going back to 2016-17. So over the past 10 years, we've averaged about 3.8%. This year, it's a little bit higher, 5.8%. But as you see there, the last 4 or 5 years, we've had just an increase in inflation. So that's kind of the major factor of that. Looking at the tax levy comparison over the past 10 years, so the good news here is that over the past 10 years, it's averaged about 1.8%, I believe, and here again, we're coming in below the 10-year average at 1.5%. So trending in the right direction there. So I have to talk about, well, I think it's prudent to talk about contingent budget rules. And what this simply means is that, if this recommendation is adopted by the board and for whatever reason it's voted down by the public, then we have to resort to what's called contingent budget rules. And meaning that we can't increase the tax levy if it's voted down twice, and we have to basically just put forward all the essential items. So that would leave us a 1.9 million deficit, meaning that we would have to find that money or cut to meet that deficit. So, and these are upcoming budget dates, encouraging all to actually participate in voting. Pending your questions.
Is the Crusader Chat going to have a format similar in years past where the public can submit questions that'll be answered?
Sure, we have spoken about that. I know that's something we've done in the past, and we're prepared to do that. If there's an appetite for that, yes.
Thank you, Dr. Norman. Mr. Cahill.
Thank you.